والمرسلين سيدنا ومولانا أبا القاسم المصطفى محمد وعلى أهل بيت الطيبين الطاهرين ولعنة الله على أعدائهم إلى قيام يوم الدين. When Allah introduces Shahr Ramadan in the Holy Quran, He defines it as it is the month that unzila fihi al-Quran. It is the month that the Quran has been revealed. So this is one of the reasons why the prime discussion or the prime topic of Shahr Ramadan should always be around the Holy Quran, because it is a chance for us to get familiar with this book that is a miracle from Allah. Many of us don't realize that we all have a miracle in our homes, and that is the Holy Quran. Many other prophets came and they proved their miracle. For example, Prophet Musa ﷺ performed his miracles, Prophet Isa ﷺ performed his miracles. Then they brought down the scripture. But you see that in Islam it is different. First, we see that the Quran is the main miracle of Rasulullah, and the Quran is what proves prophethood, and one of the ways that we can prove that our prophet is a prophet is because of the Holy Quran. The difference with this is that if you weren't there to experience the miracles of Prophet Musa ﷺ, if you weren't there to experience the miracles of Prophet Isa ﷺ, today you say, I didn't see, I don't know. Did he really do those things, for example? But yet when the miracle is the book, then there's no excuse that actually when you're reading, you see this is a proof. Some ask, well, how is the Quran a miracle? The main issue of the miraculous nature of the Quran is its balaghat, its eloquence, its ability. Part of it is to explain complicated things in a very easy manner, but at the same time in a very beautiful manner. A way that anyone, when they pick up the Quran today, they look at it and the Quran is fasih for them, very clear to them. They do not need, for example, another book to explain what is this place, where is that, necessarily, and they don't understand anything. Yes, we have tafsir of Quran because Quran has layers and layers, like a person who dives in the ocean can find things, for example, in the normal, beaches, and then when they dive deeper and deeper and deeper, they can find, for example, pearls. The Quran is in the same way. And many times you have verses that apparently it has a meaning, but the ta'wil and batin also has another meaning. So therefore, Quran is extraordinary in this nature, is that it talks to you. And I feel, and I've had conversation with non-Muslims, and you have to understand this. There's coming from a different continent, coming from 1400 years ago, but whoever picks up the Holy Quran, they say, it is talking to me, it is addressing my problems, it is relative to me. And that is what we want. We want the Holy Quran to be relative to our lives. Because we said the reward in reciting Quran isn't just saying the letters, because if you bring right now a parrot, it will recite for Quran. If you teach it, it will say some verses. To not recite like a parrot, to recite with understanding. And this is what the Quran itself says, to do tadabbur and thinking about the Quran. Then the last stage is action and implementing the Quran. A world that is, the Quran has been implemented would be one that is perfect. One that there's no more fasad and corruption. One that there's no more dhulm, for example. One that is based on idalat and justice. One that is based on rahmah and mercy. So therefore the problem with that, and the solution to mankind's problems today is the understanding and the implementation of Quran in our individual lives, in our family lives, and in our social lives, in our political lives, that the Quran should be implemented, inshallah. Please recite Salat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa Jafar. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Surah Ash-Sharh, Surah 94. Again, if you promise not to play video games on your phones, you can bring your phone out, your device out. We'll give you permission for 30 minutes, and you can open the Holy Quran, or you can even get a hard copy, which is no problem either, and follow me. Chapter 94. Chapter 93 is Ad-Duha, Surah Ad-Duha. 94 is Inshirah, Alam Nashrah Laka Sadrak. We have two pairs of surahs in the Quran. Ad-Duha wal Inshirah and Quraysh al-Fil. These, if they're recited in the Salat, they should be recited together because they're treated as one surah generally. Some of the Sunni ulama also accept this as well. This is something usually exclusive to followers of Ahlul Bayt, that these four surahs are in two pairs, as how I mentioned. So therefore, if you ever recite this, like tonight, you say, oh, I like this surah very much, I want to recite in Salat, remember to recite also Surah Al-Inshirah and Ad-Duha. The content of this verse talks about three blessings from Allah, just how Surah Al-Duha talks about three blessings. And most, if you look at this surah, it talks about the struggles of Rasulullah, the difficulty that he had in Mecca. What was going on in Mecca in this 13 years? Rasulullah didn't have much following. And if you look at those followers that he has, were very sincere individuals. Sometimes you'd see, like for example, him leading Salat and Imam Ali and Lady Khadija, for example. But later on, he warned his family members. And later on, he had more followers, but it's very sad that his followers were either tortured or killed. Sometimes their parents were tortured and killed. And they had to migrate to Ethiopia, modern-day Ethiopia, some. He sent a group to see if life is better in Ethiopia. Then 3 years, he was in Shi'b Abi Talib. He was in sanctioned. 3 years. Muslims would have to split dates. And they didn't have enough food, for example, these 3 years. But his protection was from Abu Talib, the father of Imam Ali alayhi salam. And he would give protection to Rasulullah. But you see that during this time, it was 13 years of hardship for Rasulullah. So therefore, they say this surah is about that time period. When you talk about the reward, it says about whoever recites the surah will be like the one who has met Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It says, كَمَنْ لَقِيَ مُحَمَّدًا مُغْتَمًّا means with gham. That while he was saddened in Mecca, while he had sadness, فَفَرَّجَ عَنْهُ and relieved from his grief. And we'll talk about, he was later on relieved from his grief. We'll talk about that inshallah. So when you go with the first verse, Inshirah or Sharh, Inshirah comes from the Arabic of Sharh, which means, the root of the word comes like when you cut, for example, meat. And I think maybe those who prepared the food tonight, they know this better when they made the juju kebab, for example, or sometimes make kebab a bag, for example. You see how you cut the meat, you slice it, for example, into pieces. They call this Sharh, for example. Some think that this is from the Prophet's Sharh literally being opened up, for example. And that it was actually literally opened up. It's not literal, it's figurative from our understanding. Alam Nashrah Laka Sadrak. Here, Inshirah means expanded, not like cut up. Inshirah means expanded. Why? Because when a person has, some people have a chest that is expanded. What can a chest be expanded with? Chest can be expanded with spiritual reasons. It can be with peace, or sometimes it can be even expanded with with patience. Have you ever seen a leader? And this is one of the traditions, talks about a leader. And some of you either are a boss, for example, you have your own business, your father figure, for example. You need to have an expanded chest, meaning that you have to know how to deal and cope with difficult things. So one of the issues of someone who has qualities of someone who has an expanded chest, deals with the difficulties very easily, for example. And is capable to face people with other opinions. One of the problems we have sometimes in our communities is we're very one-sided, or we're one-dimensional. And that we think that, oh, if a person's good if he thinks politically like me only, if he thinks just like me, if his marja taqleed is my marja taqleed, or his city is my city. We have to be able to have a large chest, expanded chest. Meaning that sometimes someone wants to put me down. For example, I'm leading the community. Someone wants to put me down. For example, I might come for salat late, for example, and they say something, for example, or you park your car, for example, you didn't pay attention, and they read your license plate in front of everyone, and a person shouldn't be, should be frustrated with these things. When you are a leader, when you are a father figure, when you're a mother, for example, you should be able to cope with criticisms, with people, for example, telling you things, and not get offended. Today, if you look at today, modern day society in America, the youth get very offended by the smallest little thing, for example. You should have done that. You should have done that. What? Or if you're one driving, you're even hesitant. Should I honk? This guy is falling asleep, for example. It's a green light. Should I honk? You honk, and they get offended. They get upset. A person shouldn't be so offended. True, we shouldn't go out of our way to harm people, but a true leader is one who has si'ah, a large chest. And a good father is one who deals with problems that face his family and doesn't give up, for example. And a good mother is one at the same time. The children don't drive mother crazy, for example, or the other duties that mother has. So if you want to be a whole, good, complete Muslim, you have to train yourself not to be so offended by people. Not to, as we said, some of the traditions say, that the best, if you want to be complete, if you want to be the best, you have to have a formula. And the formula is that with some part of fitan, cleverness, paying attention, and the other part, taghaful, forgetting, pretending you didn't listen. Taghaful, ghifla, I didn't hear it. Many times you hear some things throughout the day. If you want to respond to everything fully, you get old, you get tired, you'll be sick. Do a little taghaful. I didn't hear it. You hear something in the house, you're like this, you're like that. Forget it and let it go, for example. You don't have to go back and do it in a worse. For example, your parents like that, your grandparents are like that, for example. You don't have to respond with the same. Do taghaful. So we see one of the great qualities of Rasulullah, you see, is that however much hardship he had a large chest, and he included everyone. And I include everyone. And I told people, in masjid, whatever political beliefs you want to have, whatever marja you want to follow, whatever culture you're from, this is a place of worship. We have to be very open, open-minded. We have to have a large chest. And if somebody criticizes you, we actually say, it's okay. You're learning how to deal with criticism. Sometimes, I always tell everyone, if there's a problem with ahkam, tell me. But if somebody tells you something, for example, this salat or whatever, tell me, I'll tell them. They criticize you, say this is wrong, we'll say, well, thank you. Be open to criticism. Don't be so easily offended. Because if you think of someone like me, I'm full of error. None of my action is perfect. I have so many errors and mistakes. So if somebody's going to fix me, a lot of times, even in my own, they come to me and maybe they say, you maybe did this wrong, or even in salat you did this, and I think about it, and I don't reject it. I think if it's true, then I correct it. There's no problem with that. You should say thank you, for example, for a person helping you out. Again, if there are criticisms or things going wrong with the Islamic law aspect, please tell me. It's better for me to tell people than for you to tell them, because they might become bad with you. They say, how do you know? But if I say it, they say, okay, well, for example, Sayyid said it, Shaykh said it, they will not have a problem with me. Alam nashrah laka sadrak. So one part, and we learn from this, is to have an expanded, a tolerable chest, one that we can hold a lot of things. And we see our Muslim leaders, we see our maraja, those who recently, have become shaheed, what type of chest they had, what type of, Allah expanded their chest in this fashion with all the adversities, all the difficulties, all the problems, they continued the resistance. Why? This needs an expanded chest. This needs one who will deal with criticisms of people. But if one person says something, for example, he says, he goes away and he does, as we say in Farsi, for example, he runs away, then that person is not fit for leadership. One who has tolerance, one who has patience. The other expansion of inshara is knowledge through revelation. A big chest. means that one who has revelation, one who can endure hardship, one who has patience with the enemies. Prophet Musa ﷺ made this dua. He also asked Allah to have an expanded chest. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri. Allah, expand my chest and make easy my task. Without expansion, no great leader can face difficulties. Okay, this is the first point. وَوَضَعْنَا عَنْكَ وِزْرَكَ. Did we not remove your burden? Wizr here can be, any difficulty, heavy responsibility of prophethood, can be a struggle against shirk and polytheism. This is wizr, because the polytheists gave Rasulullah a very difficult time. At the end, times became so difficult, they came to assassinate him. 40 different tribes came and said, if all of us try to kill the prophet, this person, if we all kill him, nobody, Quraysh, Bani Harship will not have a problem with us if there's 40 tribes. It was on that night that Amir al-Mu'mineen, Ali alayhi salam, decided that I will die for Rasulullah. I will put myself in the bed of Rasulullah, Laylatul Mabit, and I will sleep, and they will think I'm Prophet Muhammad, and they will kill me in his place. But yet, they realized, and Allah saved Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, and was not assassinated. Or the hardships of da'wah, how difficult it is telling people a new message. Telling your society, everyone, basically you're wrong. Polytheism is wrong. How difficult is that? You need to worship Allah. You need to do your salat, for example. These things that you're doing right now are haram. How difficult it is. Or we can also have this wizr to be, personal grief, for example, that came from the loss of Abu Talib and Lady Khadija, that become known as Amul Huzn, the year of grief. He lost these two great individuals in Mecca. So Alladhi anqadha dhahrak, that burden which weighed heavily on your back, that we will remove this burden. When will it be removed? When Prophet moves to Medina. So that's why this surah is known as a Mecca surah. وَرَفَعْنَا لَكَ ذِكْرَكَ, and we raised your mention. Allah has raised the mention of Rasulullah. How? In adhan. Throughout the entire world. New York, recently, they have made the adhan allowed. For example, the city, one of the centers in New York, spoke with the mayor, and after a while they said, it's actually Shia Center, Al-Khoy Center. They spoke to the mayor, and then after that, adhan is, for example, legal to be, recited. I don't think this is the case. I don't know, it depends on what city you live in or not, but New York, it's like that, for example. And the state of Michigan, Anyways, so you see, all over the world, the name of our Prophet is mentioned in adhan. And so many people, they listen to adhan. They say, how beautiful is it? What kind of call is this? They get affected by it. Or testimony of faith in salat, you mentioned the Prophet's name. When you become Muslim, a person becomes Muslim, he says the Prophet's name. Then Quran talks about this very important concept, and this is what we'll focus more on tonight, and this is what relates to our struggle and what is going on today in today's times. فَإِنَّ مَعَ الْعُسْرِ يُسْرًا. إِنَّ مَعَ الْعُسْرِ يُسْرًا. So after hardship, there comes ease. Surely, verily, after hardship, there is ease. Some say usr, which is hardship. You ever see, for example, asir means like to get juice of something, to squeeze, usr. Sometimes life is so difficult as if you're being squeezed. They say it comes 12 times in the Quran, but yusr comes 36, 3 times as much in the Holy Quran, yusr. And this is a concept the Quran is saying that, and repeats, that there's going to be hardship, then there will be ease. There is going to be 13 years in Mecca. There is going to be battle of Badr. There's going to be battle of Uhud, Khandaq, battles later on. But then there will be Fath Mecca. Then there will be the conquest of Mecca. There will be the victory of Mecca. See, at that time, the Prophet had mercy upon the people. He didn't take revenge, even though he had also back then, but then he had ease. So we understand this concept that if you look at your own lives, in the lives that you want to start, especially for the youth that want to get married, for example, that are starting their lives out. A lot of times you think, I don't have much income, I want to get married. I don't have much. And this is a time period of also, it's difficult, yes. Or sometimes they're students, or they might not even have a house. They have to rent something. Well, obviously there will be a time period of also, if you ask your parents, and they're at your age, around 20, 30, they also didn't have much. Usually they didn't have much and they started with little. And in terms of financial pressure, there was financial burden on them to start a family. Then when you have a kid, or 2 kids, inshallah, then you see Allah gives that rizq to that child, of the wife, for example, to the father. And then he notices that after a while of working hard, they will have yusr. So therefore, do not come, especially if those who want to get married, they say, no, you have to have this much income. Or if this social trend, how much is your meher, for example? For example, how many helicopters is your meher, for example? This trend. Why do they need to have a helicopter now? Maybe they can have it 30 years later when they work hard, for example. It's difficult for a 20-year-old to buy a helicopter, for example. So therefore, we see this. There will be there will be difficulty. But you're young. You're very tolerable. You can be accustomed to change. And that sweetness of working from small, from little, to getting more and more and more, that is a sweet journey itself. But if you have everything you ever wanted from the beginning, you take it for granted. You won't enjoy it as much. So therefore, my recommendation for those who are looking for marriage, and those who are thinking of this, do not think of that financial issue too much. Allah will give you rizq, inshallah. Allah will promises He will give us our rizq. So therefore, even if there is some hardship, it will be temporary. It will be temporary, inshallah, and you'll pass. Also, we see everything else that happens. When you see the Prophet in his struggle with the polytheists, after continuing his message, being steadfast, he was victorious. In the same way, when we fight, and we are fighting against oppression, and we are resisting, that struggle at the beginning is usr. Yes, it's very difficult, especially that there are big powers behind these, for example, these individuals that are causing us oppression. But then this, that eventually things will become easy for you. It's not always going to be hard. Or if you don't resist, and you allow that person to come in and do whatever they want to you and to your people, you will always be in hardship. You'll always be a slave of them. You live your entire life in usr. But if you struggle and the people resist against what is wrong, against oppression, you'll see finally those areas will become free. Finally, people will become independent. And this is the history of mankind. All the civilizations that have resisted and said no to the occupier, at the end they became free. And all those civilizations that never wanted to fight against them and always wanted to bow down to them, they were always a slave to them and always were humiliated by them and always lived a life of us in reality. An interesting thing that I want to add here is this. There's this concept in our deen that many people think that Islam is a hard religion. They say that Islam has a lot of wajibat, obligations, and these are hard. I want you to think about this verse and think the opposite. What happens if I do not act upon the commands of Islam? Is that hardship more or is that hardship less? Do you understand what I'm saying? I'm saying, let's see. Someone doesn't want to wear hijab. Someone doesn't want to fast. Someone doesn't want to do salat. Somebody wants to they cannot say no to intoxications or drugs, for example. Maybe for them it's hard because at the beginning you want to do what your heart desires, right? I want to have this relationship. I want to have this intoxication. I want to remove that hijab, for example. I want to be free. بَلْ يُرِيدُ الْإِنسَانِ لِيَفْجُرَ أَمَامَ. Insan wants that what is in front of him to be open. Verse of Quran wants to open, to be free, to do whatever he wants. But let's say I give in. No more fasting this Shahr Ramadan. No more salat. No more halal and haram. Okay, now I'm free. I'm easy, right? It's going to be easy for me. I'm going to have an easy life. But let's look at the long-term consequences. The long-term consequences are usr, are hardship. Because if I give into any type of relationship and I don't, become in love with someone, or for example, satisfy my lower desires through, say, marriage, and it's with whoever this relationship, Allah, whatever relationship that comes forth, then I'm going to be in trouble. I'm always going to be heartbroken. I'm always going to meet somebody, break up with them, meet someone, break up with them. I don't have any, for example, guidelines as to guide this relationship. You see people today, and those who have allowed relationships, they're always, I broke up with this, I met this person. Broke up with this person. How much can this heart, the heart has been designed to have a stickiness nature to it, right? To stick to one person. And that's how it is. Those who are old-fashioned, they met somebody, they got married, they stick usually, right? Because there's adhesiveness. But if you keep changing and having more relations with different people, that stickiness will be gone. And later on, you cannot stay married with somebody. You're always going to find problems with them, for example. So you answer this question. When Islam says, for example, do not have relationships, for example, except for marriage, which one is harder to say no to at the beginning to individuals? Say, no, I cannot have a relationship with you. I cannot get to know you in this way. We can work together, fine. We can, as group activities in university or whatever, there's team projects, that's fine. But a personal relationship I cannot have with you, that's at the beginning hard, right? But it's easier than going into a relationship with that person and then breaking up. Same thing with intoxicants. Drinking, for example. God forbid, drugs. My friends are all smoking. My friends are saying, try this marijuana, try these drugs, for example. At the beginning, it's hard because you're telling your friends, no, I don't want to have it. But it's easier than getting addicted to it and smoking and consuming it and then trying to leave it, because Islam is trying to make your life easier for yourself. So therefore, when you think of long-term, Islam is telling us about yusr, easiness. It's protecting you from hardship, protecting you from difficulties and addiction. And the same with hijab. The same way, for example, with listening to my parents. The same with doing my salat that protects me from fahsha and munkar. Same thing with Shahr Ramadan and fasting, for example, training me and giving me willpower to say no to different things. If I said no to water and, for example, drink and food, I can say no to anything, making me have a very strong sense of willpower and strength inside me. So the question that I propose to you is, saying no at the beginning, even though it might be hard, is actually easier. And the same we said with countries that resist, for example, they fight at the beginning and they're tough and strong, then they'll have years of independence. They'll have years that they are free and they can regulate things how they want to. So again, the law is this, what we learn from Quran, فَإِنَّ مَعَ الْعُسْرِ يُسْرًا. And we pray that right now, things that are happening in Iran and Lebanon and Gaza, we pray to Allah, this Shahr Ramadan, this is officially going to be the last night of Shahr Ramadan. Tonight will be, the night of Eid. So we ask this last night of Shahr Ramadan, Allah, inshallah, give patience, Allah give protection to the followers of Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. May Allah give victory to them, inshallah. Remember, your du'as are very effective. Inna ma'al usri yusra. The Prophet said in hadith, وَأْلَمْ أَنَّ مَعَ الْعُسْرِ يُسْرًا وَأَنَّ مَعَ الصَّبْرِ النَّصْرِ. The Prophet said, know with the hardship is ease, and with patience is victory. Patience will be victory. وَأَنَّ الْفَرَجَ مَعَ الْكَرْبِ. And with distress comes relief. Inshallah, one day there'll be relief for our people, inshallah. فَإِذَا فَرَقْتَ فَانْصَبْ. So when you are free, then strive, meaning that do not be idle, move from one action to another action. For example, from prayer to supplication, from obligations to voluntary acts. وَإِلَىٰ رَبِّكَ فَارْغَبْ. And then to your Lord, turn your desire. Therefore, we see that this surah is one of the surahs of optimism, a surah that teaches us that there will be hardship, but after hardship, there is easiness. And we explain that many times we think that easiness means to do whatever I want, but actually easiness isn't that. Easiness is following the commands of Allah and He gives me a wholesome, good life, and that's the easy life. Now that I'm married, for example, now that I have kids, now I'm away from addiction, I have a good job, for example, that is easiness. But if I listen to my desires from the beginning, and I think that's easiness, then I'm going to have a hard entire rest of my life. Ya Allah, we ask you, these nights of Shahr Ramadan, this last night, if you have not forgiven us this Shahr Ramadan, please forgive us in the last night of Shahr Ramadan. Ya Allah, we ask you, all those individuals who were volunteers for 30 days, 30 nights, all of you who participated and supported Masjid so that we can come together here, pray together, and believe me, the fact that we're together during these difficult times, a lot of people get ease out of this. It calms them down compared to just being at home and reading the news. The fact that you're participating here, reward all of you, inshallah, the volunteers, the participants, the sponsors, inshallah, everyone. Ya Allah, please allow our marhumeen and our family members and our dear ones who have passed away, give them reward from our ibadah, inshallah. Cure all of those who are sick, help all those that are in need, give protection for all those that are looking for protection, inshallah, every day and night, and give victory to the mu'mineen, inshallah, and expedite the return of Imam al-Zaman with his salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajil fajr.